Welcome to another episode of the GunBlog VarietyCast with your hosts, Sean Sorrentino and Aaron Paulette.
Welcome to episode 170 of GunBlog VarietyCast Radio, a proud member of the Self-Defense Radio Network. How are you doing, Aaron?
I have the weirdest sense of deja vu right now.
Yeah, so do I. I wonder why that is. So we got through the entire intro, and I'm about to kick it off into the main show. We're going to talk about, joining GunBlog VarietyCast Radio and that sort of stuff. And I look up to check what the time is on the recorder, and it's like 00000, all in green. I have not been recording anything the whole time. So, yeah, we get to do it all over again. Maybe it'll be better this time. Do you think, Aaron?
Yeah, I think so. So speaking of better, how do I sound?
Sound fine, Aaron. Sound done pretty much like you always do. Why?
For the longest time now, I've had just a little bit of a speech impediment, and earlier this week, some of my friends told me, "Hey, Aaron, you don't sound mumbly. You don't have that impediment. You sound like yourself." And I was all, yay, finally, because, I talk a lot. I've got a big mouth, and so it's really nice to know that I'm talking normally once again.
Last week, you sounded pretty normal. This week, I wouldn't have known there was a problem.
Oh, great. So, yeah, the swelling is going down every day. It's still noticeable. So I am still very self-conscious, and I don't go out in public a whole lot. And so because I am staying inside, I am binge-watching a TV show on Hulu. And it's Enterprise, the early 2000s Star Trek. I watched, a couple seasons of it, and then I moved, and I never was able to finish it. So I'm binge-watching it, and I am shuddering at all of the poor gun mishandling because, well, they don't even have phasers. They have phased pistols, and they actually look like pistols, but they don't have trigger guards on them. Their holsters don't cover the triggers. When the characters hold them, their fingers are on the trigger all the time. And here's the worst part. Everyone muzzles each other. The worst part, the absolute worst part, was when the show's frickin' security officer, the tactical guy, the one who knows guns, muzzles his captain multiple times with his finger on the trigger. I'm wincing. And I didn't have this reaction the first time I watched the show because, 17 years ago, I wasn't into guns. So this just never seemed like a thing to me. But now I'm watching it again and I'm going, oh my God, this is horrible. It's just funny what being a gun owner has done to me.
So I got to spend the week in Philadelphia again.
And sounds like you had a marvelous time.
Well, it is Philadelphia. I don't like to travel. I don't mind if I'm going on vacation, right? You're going to give me some money, send me on vacation, man, I'm there. I can travel anywhere. What I don't like is I don't like going and spending a week in another city, in a hotel, taking training for my job. I just hate that. It's got to be done. I got to learn this stuff. If I don't know how to do this particular skill that they're trying to teach me, I can't get the next promotion. And so, I can do it. I feel a little bit like I was drinking from a fire hose, but you know how those things go. So I'm staying at the Hyatt right next to the King of Prussia Mall. For being the largest mall in the United States, it's not very pedestrian friendly.
Wait, Sean, people walk through malls. You don't drive through malls. Malls, by definition, are pedestrian friendly. How can the biggest mall in America not be pedestrian friendly?
The mall itself, definitely pedestrian friendly. You could walk through the mall. If you're in the parking lot and you want to go into the mall and you want to walk around the mall, yeah, you can walk. That's not the problem. My problem is that I wanted to go to an Indian restaurant that was on the other side of the mall from where I was staying. So I thought, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to walk across the street. I'm going to go through the parking lot. I'm going to walk all the way through the mall. I'm going to go out the other side of, I guess it was like Macy's or something. And then I'm going to walk across the parking lot. I'm going to cross the street and there's the Indian restaurant. Well, guess what? I walk across the mall, I walk out into the parking lot, and it's a parking deck, and it's not immediately apparent which of those decks actually goes out to the street. When I finally found a parking lot that was the same level as the street, I get to the street, I have to climb over some guardrails, and there's like every direction you look, it says do not cross. I felt like I was playing Frogger because, like, at this point, I'm like, I'm getting my Indian food. I'm not going back to the mall and eating in the food court. I'm out of here. I'm going across. So I ran across the street anyway. Now, I'm not going to get all conspiracy theory and say, well, they did it on purpose, to keep you in the mall. Because that would take some thinking. I think it was just that they were really terrible streets. Like, you really shouldn't have been crossing those streets. But, I'm a grown-ass man. I'll figure it out. Because I was, doing a business thing, they had to feed me dinner and they had to, keep me in the hotel and all that other stuff. So I ended up eating at that Indian place twice. I did find a better route. I found that if you stay on the road and walk around the mall and under some tunnel or something, I don't know what it was, you don't actually have to cross at a dangerous spot. You do, however, have to walk behind a building in an alley that's dark in the middle of Philadelphia. Oh, well, it's actually King of Prussia. Literally, it's King of Prussia Mall. But, like, I'm in Philadelphia. It's a work thing, so I don't have a gun with me. I, like a dummy, put my pocket knife back in the car rather than put it in my checked luggage. And pepper spray, I think you were saying that maybe you can take pepper spray in your checked luggage. I thought you couldn't, so I left that in the car. So I've got a flashlight. I mean, it's like a 320 lumen flashlight. I can burn your eyeballs out with it. But that was all I had in the dark alley behind the building on the way to the Wawa across the street for the Indian restaurant. So I didn't really like it. I didn't like it at all. It's a nice hotel, but I'd really rather be home. So this week, Handgun Radio with Weer'd and Ryan. I got to talk about SIG pistols on Handgun Radio with them. And I think that's because they didn't have an actual expert. And they figured, well, you've got two of them. You can tell us about the recall. So they invited me on. If you'd like to hear that, check out Handgun Radio. And friend of the show, Sarah Cade, appeared on Geeks, Gadgets, and Guns, which is another podcast in the Self-Defense Radio Network. And she talked about drones, among some other geeky stuff.
Well, hey, speaking of Geeks, Gadgets, and Guns, they've asked me to appear on their show and talk about tabletop role-playing games. Because apparently, 2 out of the 3 people involved, they've only played online RPGs, and they don't understand this odd arcane practice involving character sheets and paper and funny dice. And I'm actually going to be recording that later tonight in a few hours, so maybe that'll be on next week.
Well, you're going to record it tonight, assuming we don't mess up the recording again and have to do this a third time.
Well, I've got like 4 hours until the recording time. I think we'll get it done by then.
Yeah, or I'll get stabbed to death by my wife for messing up dinner. So, a quick reminder, join GBVC Radio Group on Facebook. Talk about the podcast. Tell us what you thought about the last episode, this episode. We'll see you there.
Thanks to Lucky Gunner and Remington for their support of GunBlog VarietyCast Radio. From Golden Saber to range rounds, get a full lineup of quality Remington ammo that ships fast at luckygunner.com.
All right, let's get on with the show.
Beth feels that RSOs, range safety officers, are basically the black belts of the gun world. In other words, not everyone should be able to call themselves one. She and her husband explain why.
I don't know if it's because I've had some bad experiences lately or if it's just one of my pet peeves, but I've been thinking a lot about the duties and the responsibilities of the RSO, or the range safety officer. So I decided that maybe that would be a topic of interest that my husband Sean and I could talk about, since he and I are both certified as RSOs, and we also function as safety officers in a lot of competitive matches that we do. Sean, is it just me, or do you agree that the role of the RSO is just really important?
It is important, super important, because you're the range safety officer. So you have a pretty big job.
Which is what?
To make sure everybody's safe with what could be very dangerous tools or firearms. So it's a huge deal.
So what exactly does a range safety officer do? Just not talking about a match specific, but if you were at a meeting of the well-armed woman, or if we were doing like a basic pistol class, what are some things that you do as the safety officer?
Calling the range hot and cold, keeping everybody's firearms, I guess you could say, under control if they're on the shooting, the firing line, or if they're getting their stuff out of their bags, make sure nobody's muzzling each other. You're the guy or gal that is supposed to be able to manipulate different types of guns in case there is a malfunction, because you're the one who they're going to come to if their gun jams, or if a spring goes blown out of the back of it or something. You are going to be the one that they come to help fix it, or if they drop their gun, or just it's on you.
Well, and how many times do you find yourself saying, oh, watch your muzzle, or finger off the trigger? How many times do you think you do that in any given session as a safety officer?
Well, when we're teaching classes, very often, all the time, constantly. In matches, it just depends on the shooter. The experienced shooters aren't going to do it. The new people, you got to be watching them.
So ultimately, the range safety officer is pretty important and has basically life or death scenarios that they have to worry about all the time.
Sure.
And have you ever been a safety officer and felt unsafe?
I've had a few guns pointed at my forehead. Yeah, I have.
So people purposefully pointing guns at you?
No, but after they shoot, they turn around and want to look at their pals or whatever, and as they turn around, it just so happens that they're also facing a gun at my face.
And I guess this is one of the reasons why we kind of joke that maybe we all need to wear t-shirts that say, not a safe direction. Because a lot of times that's exactly what happens as a safety officer. You're out there when someone's super excited, or they have a question, or they're just not paying attention like they should. And they don't realize that the gun needs to be pointing downrange at all times, no matter what their bodies are doing. I mean, there have even been times where we've had wildlife, like birds flying around, or bees, or maybe there's just some kind of bugs. I mean, and people get a little freaked out. And safety officers have to be there to make sure everything's in control and that, no one's doing something that could hurt them or someone else. So it's a very serious job. And I guess for me, I kind of liken it to the Black Belt Club. Now, I took martial arts with you just when we both did Aikido together, and you were in the Black Belt Club. I was not. But explain what that is, because I really think there is kind of a line of similarity there.
Well, it is as nerdy as it sounds.
It's not nerdy.
Oh, yeah, it is. Black Belt Club. You're asked to be in this club because you have proven that you know the techniques, that you're maybe okay to help instruct other students, but that you have a well enough grasp on what's going on that you could, even if you're not a black belt, you could be representing or be a black belt. You just might not be the rank yet of black belt. So you are proving yourself, I guess, worthy, as nerdy as and martial artsy as that sounds. So you've done all the things necessary, but you just might not have the black belt yet, although they kind of see you as having enough experience to be.
You have the potential.
Yeah, you have the potential.
And you have proven yourself.
It's an exclusive club. It's a pretty big deal.
Okay.
But super nerdy.
Well,
jeez.
But it is for those who have studied and have shown themselves to be knowledgeable and skillful.
Oh yeah, it's the higher up belts.
It's not necessarily, oh, you're in the black belt club and you can teach me, but you can recognize if I'm doing it correctly or incorrectly.
Sure.
Okay. Well, would you say that's like a safety officer?
Yeah, you might be a black belt, or you might be experienced enough that you have been proven worthy and you can be trusted with other people's safety.
And there's the key right there. The safety officer is not just for people who have shot for a long time. That is irrelevant.
Yeah, they might have their finger on the trigger. They might muzzle their buddies all the time. Doesn't matter.
And it's not for people who are brand new. And it's not a nerdy club, but it really is.
Maybe it is. Maybe it's the shooting nerd club.
Well, but it's a privilege. It's an honor. And it's when someone has proven themselves to know the skills and has experience enough to recognize if it's done correctly or incorrectly, where, again, they can be helpful and they can keep control. They can look for safety issues or violations. There's so much similarity, it's actually ridiculous. And I'm seeing a lot of people who are very excited about the range safety officer and they're wanting to get their certification. I always refuse to teach this class unless I know these folks are basically the Black Belt Club, are basically the folks who are serious, who are dedicated. Range safety officer isn't about, oh, let me learn all the things there might be to know about the range. This is the person who knows the rules inside and out and lives by them, abides by them all the time. It might even be the person who's a stickler about it, who goes over and above to make sure that he, she, and everybody else is abiding by those rules and not breaking them. There's no complacency. There's no comfortable kind of, I've been around guns my whole life. And there's no carelessness. These folks aren't just responsible for themselves. Now they're responsible for everyone on the line.
And behind the line.
And around the line. Everywhere. Anyone that is on that range, shooting or not, is under the range safety officer's responsibility. So, do we need safety officers?
Yeah.
Do we need skilled safety officers?
Yes. You're a much better RSO than I am.
I'm just a stickler.
Yes, you are the most incredible safety patrol RSO on planet Earth.
I could be the black belt club of the RSO duties, but I guess I'm never going to be
You're the black belt club of the back. You designed and made the black belt club.
Oh, sure.
And you're in charge of it with its Bible.
Notice, though, that I didn't make black belt club in martial arts, but that's because I wasn't quite skilled enough and dedicated enough to be responsible in that kind of position. Not because I wasn't nerdy enough. It just wasn't.
Oh, no, you're nerdy enough.
No, I just didn't know the techniques backwards and forwards like the rest of the people did. I'm glad we had a chance to share this with people who are curious about safety officers, who maybe have thought about doing the RSO class. I highly recommend it and encourage it, but keep in mind it's the Black Belt Club, so make sure you are ready for the duties and responsibilities that will be all on you. Until next time, stay safe and be well armed.
You can read more from Beth at usconcealedcarry.com/blog and click on Pacifiers and Peacemakers in the left sidebar.
This podcast runs on your donations. Go to GunBlog VarietyCast.com and click on the donate or the subscribe button in the right sidebar. You can make a one-time donation of any amount or subscribe for as little as $2 a month. That doesn't sound like much, but we pay our server costs monthly. A little help from you is a big help to us.
Felons behaving badly. Murder charge filed after man beat to death. A homeless man used his hands and elbows to beat a man to death, police say, and now he faces a second-degree murder charge. Gaston County Police charged suspect, 29, with second-degree murder on Monday after a fight in a trailer park home around 11 p.m. Friday. Police began investigating after Garrett Wade Abernathy, who would have turned 23 on Monday, November 13th, was brought to Carolina's Medical Center Lincoln after suffering blunt force injuries stemming from an assault, Captain Curtis Russell said Monday. Abernathy was transferred to Carolina's Medical Center Maine in Charlotte, where he died Saturday. Police do not yet know what led to the dispute. We don't know if it was drug-related, alcohol-related, or they just didn't get along, Roselle said. And if it's that they just didn't get along, it's pretty sad that it got to this point. Abernathy's father, Bobby Abernathy of Lincolnton, said no matter what happened between the two men, his son did not deserve to be beat to death. There's no explanation and no reason for someone to beat my son the way my son was beat, Bobby Abernathy said. This was just senseless. Not even an animal should be treated like this. Police investigators determined the altercation occurred at a trailer inside the Creekside Mobile Home Park on Chum Road off Tryon Courthouse Road between Bessemer City and Cherryville.
Stop by and say hi.
Police charged suspect with attempted first-degree murder around 6 a.m. Saturday while Abernathy was still alive. The charges were upgraded to a second-degree murder charge on Monday morning after consultation with the District Attorney's Office and North Carolina Medical Examiner's Office, Roselle said. Suspect and Abernathy had been living in the trailer for several weeks, Roselle said. The man who actually lived in the trailer had allowed the two men to stay there. Abernathy knew suspect, but had not been acquainted with him long, Bobby Abernathy said. Abernathy was a 2012 graduate of Burns High School, said his father. He had worked in landscaping, but had not worked for the past few months. My son was a caring, loving man, his father said. He'd do pretty much anything anyone would ask of him. If anyone needed help, he'd be the first one there. There are no other suspects being sought in the case, police said. It's a shame that this happened, Roselle said. This was just two guys who got into a physical altercation and one guy did something so bad that he is being held as responsible. It's unfortunate for both parties and their families. They're losers too, Roselle said. Too many times in our society, people resolve their issues violently, rather than just talking it out or going their separate ways, Roselle said. Abernathy's family gathered at Lincolnton Hospital on Monday to release balloons on what would have been Garrett Abernathy's 23rd birthday. It's a terrible situation, Bobby Abernathy said. I never thought I'd be burying one of my children before they were burying me.
So I am confused on something, and it may be a fine point of the law, or it may just be some of the poor grammar involved in writing this article. But when Abernathy was still alive, the suspect was charged with attempted first-degree murder. Then Abernathy died, and then instead of being charged with actual first-degree murder, he's charged with second-degree murder, and it's called an upgrade. I don't understand how this is possible.
Attempted first-degree murder requires that it have been planned beforehand. If between Saturday and Monday, when they changed the charges, not only had the guy died, but they had determined that it really wasn't any premeditation, it was just they got into a fight and the dude beat him to the point where he knew he was killing the guy, then that's not really first-degree murder, that's second-degree murder.
Yeah, I get that. I may be expressing this improperly. But I was under the impression that if you charge someone with attempted first-degree murder, and then that person dies, it's no longer attempted first-degree murder, it's first-degree murder. And so when they talk about upgrading it to second degree, that just sounds weird to me is all.
It's an upgrade because the guy died, and second-degree murder is worse than attempted first-degree murder.
Well, no, see, I get the point you're making. It's just, it is phrased in an unclear and potentially confusing manner.
As many episodes as you've done with me, Aaron, how many of them were worded clearly and concisely and in a way that people would absolutely understand them immediately?
Oh, was I supposed to be keeping track?
I could keep track on one hand. I'm not sure that they actually use human beings to write these things. I'm pretty sure that they're generated by a robot.
All right, so what kind of a person would get into a fist fight in a trailer park and beat someone to death?
DWI Level 3, misdemeanor, non-class code. Carry concealed weapon, misdemeanor, class 2. Driver's license revoked, misdemeanor, class 1. Financial card fraud, misdemeanor, class 1. Hit and run, misdemeanor, class 1. 3 counts larceny, misdemeanor, class 1. Forgery, felon, class I. Possess, transfer, counterfeit instrument, felon, class I. 2 counts uttering forged papers, instruments, felon, class I. Felony breaking and entering, felon, class H. 2 counts larceny over 1,000, felon, class H. And obtain property by false pretense, felon, class H.
All right, very definitely a felon.
I wonder why he was homeless.
Yeah, I mean, here he was trying to turn his life around with forgery and counterfeiting and fraud.
Well, Baron is on assignment.
You're going to hear us talk about this in the show for the next couple months. We're taking a survey of our listeners, and we'd like you to participate. It will help us learn more about you, no matter how long you've been a listener or how frequently you listen to this show. So please take a few minutes and visit our website at GunBlogVarietyCast.com. You'll find the listener survey link at the top of the right sidebar. It's also in the show notes right at the top, and you can complete the survey anonymously. Thanks.
Miguel is not so much on assignment as wandering about southern Florida looking for his brain.
Hey, this is Lloyd Bailey, the Armed Lutheran, host of the Armed Lutheran Radio Podcast, reminding you that the podcast you're listening to is a proud member of the Self-Defense Radio Network. Check out all the great content at selfdefenseradio.net.
The main topic. Aaron, I want you to imagine the dumbest thing that GQ magazine has done or written or said in the last year. Can you picture that in your mind?
Colin Kaepernick being named Man of the Year?
Close. But I just today read something that was even dumber than that.
The hell you say?
Inside the Federal Bureau of Way Too Many Guns, a very long story in GQ. This article by Jean Marie Laskus, who I have no idea who she is. There is no telling how many guns we have in America, and when one gets used in a crime, no way for the cops to connect it to its owner. The only place the police can turn for help is a Kafka-esque agency in West Virginia, where, thanks to the gun lobby, computers are illegal and detective work is absurdly antiquated. On purpose.
You know, I'm not sure if we need a dun-dun-dun, or if this sounds like the stinger to something else in the Law & Order franchise. It all just sounds... I mean, it's so overwrought, it's so dramatic, that I expect that chung-chung.
These are their stories.
Yeah, exactly. CSI, West Virginia. Yeah!
So looking her up on Wikipedia, She is an American writer, journalist, and professor. Author of 7 books, including Concussion, Hidden America, Growing Girls, The Exact Same Moon, 50 Acres and a Poodle. Her work has been widely anthologized. I guess that's a word. I mean, she doesn't even have the excuse of being from a foreign country for her not to understand that, yes, here in America, it's okay to have guns. Now, reading this story, it's a discussion of how horrible it is, basically, for the ATF not to have all of the records of all of the guns ever purchased in the United States instantly recallable on some giant database on a computer someplace.
Right. They're basically saying it's awful that guns aren't registered nationwide and in a searchable database.
The start is, say there's a murder, blood everywhere, a dead guy on the floor. The cops come in with their yellow tape, chalk line, yada, 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 picks up the gun, takes note of the serial number. Back at the station, they run a trace. The name pops up. It's the wife, or it's the business partner. Apparently, she thinks the world should work like bad TV. Seriously? This is how you think the world works. And the problem that I have with this article is that it's just like, I can't believe that those stupid gun people would stand in the way of something that's so obviously useful. I mean, you'd have to be a troglodyte to be so stupid to think that there was any good reason not to do this wonderful thing, such as register every single gun and have an instantly searchable database. And there must be something wrong with you if you think that way. There's no attempt at anything journalistic at this. It's just straight up, this is what I think, and you guys are idiots if you believe otherwise.
Well, I noticed a weird tone fairly early on in the article where her attitude seems to be progress is good, computerization is good, everything coastal and metropolitan is good. And then she complains about how in this little town in West Virginia, you have Walmart and JCPenney and other dollar stores sucking the life out of the historic downtown. And I'm thinking, you can't have it both ways. And this made me immediately suspect her bias in pretty much everything else.
You know, I skipped right over that, but I see it now. There's something that they call the cult of picturesque poverty. Now, I love the Lonely Planet guidebooks, but the people they're talking about are the people who live by their Lonely Planet guidebooks. They want to go to some country before tourism has spoiled it, before suddenly there's expensive hotels and people living in, something other than squalor, right? They want to get to the third world and see the third world before any of these people actually better their lives. In fact, it would be even better if we could keep them in squalor so we could visit them and feel better about our lives or something. That's pretty much the same thing that's being said here. And JCPenney, Walmart, and various dollar stores sucking the life out of a quaint red brick downtown. Yeah. Okay, so we know where she is.
Yeah, and so she's all about the quaint, but the quaintness of microfiche and paper files. Oh, that's bad. And I'm just going to make up your freaking mind.
Yeah, it's only bad in her mind, really, because they don't have an instantly accessible list of every single evil person who has a gun. Because we need to keep those people under our fingers. We need to know who they are. And better yet, we should probably paint a giant red A on the front of every house that has a gun so that we know that the evil people live there.
I started a bit of a kerfuffle sometime last year because I posted on my wall and I actively wanted opinions on this. There was some place that was selling patches that were similar to the Yellow Star of David, Juden patches that Jewish people would wear in Nazi Germany. Mm-hmm. But instead of the word Juden on it, it said gun owner.
Yeah.
I tagged all my friends who were Jewish, and I said, this is a very powerful message, but it's also offensive. What do you think? There was a lot of mixed reaction about that. But a lot of people do feel, that being a gun owner does put that figurative Star of David on you. It's very uncomfortable the way it seems that people who love big government want to put that star on us so that we can easily be found and cataloged for our own safety, of course.
Yeah, for our own safety.
So there may be people who are listening to this who don't understand why the ATF and other parts of the government aren't allowed to have a giant computerized database of gun records.
Well, let's look at what they actually do, because at some point, she does get around to actually explaining how a trace works. What happens is you find a gun at a crime scene, and you look up who made the gun, right? If it's a Taurus, you talk to Taurus. In fact, you actually talk to whoever imports the guns for Taurus. If it's a Beretta, you contact the Beretta people in the United States, right? They've got a serial number. You read the serial number to them and say, where did you sell this gun? And they don't sell directly to people. They sell to distributors. The distributors then sell to FFLs, which is your local gun store. Your local gun store will then sell to somebody who walks in and buys it. Usually, sometimes they'll transfer to another FFL, but typically they're just going to sell directly to a person. So what happens is they call Beretta and they say, hey, I got Beretta XYZ. This is the serial number. Where'd you sell it? Oh, well, that went out to such and such distributor. So they call the distributor and they tell the distributor, well, we've got this. Where did it go? You got it from Beretta. Where did you sell it? Oh, we sell it to Bob and Doug's gun store, Main Street, West Virginia, someplace. They call Bob and Doug. So Bob and Doug start going through their records about that right time frame, and they look for, oh, here it is right here. And they pull out the 4473 that they are by law required to maintain for 20 years. And they read the information, or they can scan it, fax it, whatever, off to the ATF. And that's how they do a gun trace. If for some reason Bob and Doug's goes out of business, then they have to take the last 20 years of their records and give them to the ATF, who doesn't destroy them after 20 years, but apparently maintains them in perpetuity. Well, what they're trying to do is scan all of these records and put them onto microfiche, and they've just recently gotten permission that they can put them on, on PDF format, but they can't be used, they can't use an optical character recognition software so that they can digitize the records and search them. They have to manually look through each paper and find the information. And this woman's like, this is terrible. This is awful. Who's doing all the shooting and where are they getting all those guns? And how many do they have? And why can't we get control over this cluster? Wouldn't a national gun registry give us the tool to stop some of the killing? No, says the gun lobby. It would give the government a tool to confiscate our guns. And like she just goes on about how stupid basically the gun lobby is for not wanting to give free records to the government so that the government can say, I know where every gun is, because you can't confiscate what you can't find. Now, even if they knew where every gun was, at this point, there's so many of us and so few of them, it would be a pain for them to take them. But that doesn't mean we need to make it easy for them. And we're apparently idiots and crazy people because we don't think that the government should have a record of every single gun owned by every single person. And even if all it was the selling records, what, am I supposed to go then tell the government that I've sold my gun to Bob down the street?
Well, the argument goes that surely it's worth a little invasion of privacy in order to prevent murders from happening or to bring these bloodthirsty killers to justice.
Number one, no, it isn't. And number two, don't call me Shirley. I got on an airplane twice this week, and I got the porno scan and had to take off my shoes and all this other stuff when we know for a fact that nobody's going to hijack a plane without just taking an ass whipping. I don't care if you show up with a bazooka on the plane. You're going to get dogpiled and you're going to get the crap kicked out of you. The only thing they really need to be looking for is bombs, because a bomb can take down the plane. But a person who lacks a bomb isn't going to do any damage to the plane at all because he's going to be at the bottom of a dog pile. But still, we're giving up all our privacy for this security theater, getting probulated, getting stuck in the porno scan so that somebody can see my junk on whatever wavelength radar they're using, and we get nothing for it. And this is just another example. Oh, we should totally keep a record of who owns the guns so that if we ever decide we have a problem with you, well, now we know you have a gun, so we're going to come in, guns blazing, door kicked, explosives thrown through the door, and all your dogs dead. Because we found out that's exactly what they do. Oh, well, we know the guy owns a gun, so we're going to have to do an actual raid on his house. We can't just knock anymore because he might shoot us.
One of the things that got me was, well, here, I'll just read, and you can judge for yourself, and then we're going to talk about it. If America has to have this gargantuan arsenal of personal firearms and no registration system, no laws allowing us to keep track of them like we do, say, cars or household appliances or bags of lettuce, well, at least we have Charlie.
Charlie being the guy who's doing all the tracing. He's the guy in charge of the place.
Right.
It sounds kind of weird. Like, most people will say, well, we register cars, right? But she gets into household appliances and bags of lettuce. And this actually comes from earlier in the story. But why shouldn't a gun be like a car? Or food? If you need to know the history, you can call a number and somebody's got the information. If we have an E. coli outbreak, we don't have much trouble getting to the offending bags of lettuce.
Yeah, see, that's one of those things that it's not just wrong, it's fractally wrong. It's wrong in the whole, and that is composed of other bits, which are equally wrong.
Like, you can't cut it into a small enough part that part isn't wrong.
Yes, exactly. I mean, okay, the whole bags of lettuce thing. You don't fill out a Form 4473 and have a background check to buy a bag of lettuce. Making this comparison is just, it's wrong on that level. Then there's the fact that she seems to be fundamentally misinformed as to how these things work. If there is an E. coli outbreak and the government discovers it, they will contact the manufacturer, the people who bag the lettuce and distribute it, and they will look up the category, and they will call the grocers, and the grocers will pull it from their shelves, and there will be an announcement in the newspaper, on TV, that lettuce from this inventory range is bad, and you should throw it out. That is not a registry, that is inventory control. If there was a registry for lettuce, then the government would know your name and address and telephone number of the bag of lettuce, and you would receive an individualized letter or email or telephone call telling you that the bag of lettuce that you bought on Wednesday is bad and you should throw it out.
You get a no-knock raid from a SWAT team. Give me the bag of lettuce!
For your own protection, comrade.
I had to shoot your dog to keep you from eating that bag of lettuce that might have E. coli in it.
Yeah, and so she is confusing inventory control and quality control with registration.
Yeah, apparently she thinks the FDA is going to send out a SWAT team to get your lettuce. Seriously? No. I mean, it's all driven by the manufacturer. It's the manufacturer who's going to call the distributors. It's the manufacturer who's going to call the media and say, hey, we've got to recall this stuff. We're really sorry. But this is the batch and lot number, and this is the places that we sold it to. So, could you help us get this information out? Look on your Walmart receipt. It's not like it says lettuce bag number such and so, XYZ so and so that the government can look it up in the Walmart inventory control system and look at the credit card and then call me. This is just insane.
Yeah.
I think it's important that everybody read this article for two reasons. One, just to see what fractally wrong looks like. That's always worth knowing. And two, to get a sense of the sort of people we're dealing with. This is the sort of person who thinks that registry is a good idea. This is why a lot of times making an argument that is reason and fact doesn't work, because reason and fact are not going to get to this woman. This woman is so far out there that she is just looking for an argument to make.
Well, this is a woman who apparently thinks that we have registries of produce and appliances, so her mind is made up. Don't confuse her with facts. Pro-gun votes are good, but integrity is better. Tiffany weighs in with her opinion on the matter of Roy Moore.
You never really understand a person until you consider things from his point of view. Till you climb inside of his skin, walk around in it.
Hey folks, Tiffany here. I hope you are having a wonderful week. My week has been exhausting so far, and I am just barely eking out a few minutes to record, so please forgive me if I if I come across as a little unprepared. I admit I'm kind of winging it here because I've only got a few minutes to do this before I have to run back to all kinds of other drama that I'm trying to manage. But I did want to share with everybody how much fun I had this past weekend at the BDC Gun Room in Shawnee, Oklahoma, which is where we held the Rangemaster instructor reunion. We had 50 Rangemaster certified instructors from all over the country who gathered in Oklahoma at the BDC Gun Room. Kudos to Jack Barrett at the BDC Gun Room for his amazing hospitality. It was just, it was really great to get together with everybody. I mean, these are folks who have taken the Rangemaster instructor certification course at various times and in different places over the years. It was just really heartening to be among such a fine group of folks. I mean, there's roughly 800 Rangemaster certified firearms instructors across the country, and even fewer who have graduated from the advanced instructor certification program, which is the one that I did many, many years ago. And just, by comparison, I think there's something like 50,000 NRA instructors. Don't quote me on that. I heard that number from somebody. I haven't independently confirmed it, so maybe that's wrong. But point is, the 800 or so Rangemaster certified instructors are a really fine group of folks, and I was just honored and privileged to be among them. One of the great treats of my weekend with Tom and Lynn and the gang was to present a 3-hour session on what it means, essentially, to be a Rangemaster certified instructor and what kind of standards that designation imposes upon you as an educator in the world of firearm safety and personal defense. I presented along with, I guess I should probably say I was sort of second fiddle to some really highly respected Rangemaster disciples who I, again, was just privileged to work with. Some of them you've heard me talk about before, but the 4 of us were, in addition to me, it was Lee Weems, Deputy Chief Lee Weems of First Person Safety. Highly recommend his training if you're in the Georgia area. There was John Murphy of FPF training in Northern Virginia, and again, also highly recommend John. And then also John Hearn, who most people know for his really, really well-researched and data-driven analyses on fight psychology and the physiological aspects of self-defense and violent encounters. But John has been with the Rangemaster for a very long time, and he's probably one of Tom's closest proteges. And so it was just an absolute honor to work alongside John and Lee to put on that joint presentation for the group and talk about what it means to be a Rangemaster certified firearms instructor. It's a title of which I happen to be very, very proud. And so I just want to publicly thank Tom and Lynn for taking me under their wing and allowing me to be part of that very distinguished family. One of the things that I love about being a Rangemaster instructor is that it's not just about guns. It's not just about the Second Amendment. It's not even just about personal defense. It has to do more with integrity. There's a sense of integrity that undergirds everything that is taught under the Rangemaster philosophy. The result of that is that there are certain things that are just more important than guns. There are certain things that make my life worthy of the protections that firearms and situational awareness afford me in the first place, right? So it got me to thinking as certain events unfolded this week in politics about just what it means to work under the Rangemaster banner, if you will. There are certain compromises I'm not willing to make. You may have heard recently that there's a Republican Senate candidate out of Alabama who has been accused of some very, very disturbing things, including what could arguably be called child molestation or pedophilia. And this gentleman is not being judged in a court of law. He certainly has not been found guilty by a jury of his peers. But in my humble lay opinion, his purported victims come across as credible. He, on the other hand, as of this recording, hasn't really given me much reason to disbelieve them or conversely to believe him. So I say all that with the caveat that he has not been found guilty in a court of law, but he also has been accused by multiple women of doing the same thing over and over again in different instances. It's a pattern. What's disturbed me is that I've seen many pro-gun folks making excuses for that in hopes of preserving that pro-gun vote in the Senate. Believe me, I'm the last person who wants to send an anti-gun congressperson to the United States Senate. But I'll tell you what, I'm not willing to do. If I had a say, if I were an Alabama citizen voting in this election, what I would not do is I would not be willing to trade what might be perceived as tacit acquiescence or a willingness to disregard or to look the other way in the face of potential pedophilia. I'm not willing to trade that in exchange for a single pro-gun vote in the Senate. I'm just not willing to do it. And I've seen folks online who have made arguments, the Democrats are pervs too. And so if you send a Democrat, he's just as likely to be a pervert. Yeah, well, I don't have any evidence or testimony or even accusations that, any other potential Alabama senator is a pedophile. I've heard people say, well, he's innocent until proven guilty. That is true. I will absolutely give you that. And I don't want anyone to take this recording as me, saying he's guilty of what he's been accused of. I myself, personally, I've never been accused of messing around with little boys. I've not been on this earth as long as this Senate candidate has, but I've managed to make it through almost 40 years without ever once being accused of pedophilia. And I'm going to go out on a limb and venture to guess that most of our listeners have never been accused of that either. It's not really a question of whether or not he's absolutely definitively proven to be guilty of this stuff as much as it is, this is a cloud hanging over this person's head. And I'm not sure I want that cloud in the United States Senate, regardless of where we might agree on policy issues. Then I've heard people say, well, we can't afford to lose another pro-gun vote. Again, I'd go back to my original statement, which is more important to you? Giving a stamp of approval to potential child molestation or losing a single gun vote in the Senate? I'd invite folks to weigh those two options very carefully. Steering clear of the accused pedophile doesn't mean you have to send a Democrat to the Senate, write somebody in. There's a lot of different ways to handle this, but I was just a little taken aback by the readiness with which people, for their own self-serving purposes, i.e., we need to preserve the pro-gun vote in the Senate, were willing to leap to this person's defense. I even saw folks talking about how, Mary and Joseph, there was a huge age discrepancy there. And, the guy's lawyer went on TV and talked about how in other countries marriages are arranged and wives are often much, much younger than their husbands. And it just boggles the mind. But all I would say to that is, A, this is America. This is not other countries. And B, I can think of a whole lot of things that we did hundreds of years ago that would be considered abhorrent to any civilized person today. The mere fact that it might have been done back in Mary and Joseph's time, that's not enough to make me vote for this guy if I were an Alabamian. But I'm not, so it's not my choice. It is only the choice of folks who live in Alabama. And I gotta tell you, I do not envy you your decision. It's a tough spot. I know what would not be a tough choice for me. And I just wanted to remind all of my wonderful gun friends out there that, guns are really important. Having a strong pro-gun stance in the Senate and in the United States Congress is important, but our integrity and our ideals are more important, because once we start sacrificing those, then we're sacrificing the very things that we're using these guns to protect. And that would kind of defeat the purpose, right? So that's my 2 cents. Until next time, you guys stay safe, keep it centered and even, and I will talk to you next week.
You can follow Tiffany at frontsightpress.com.
Cerakote is a polymer ceramic composite coating that can be applied to metals, plastics, polymers, and wood. It's also what will take your plain Jane firearm from basic to full custom. Whether you want a handgun coated in just a single color, your hunting rifle camouflaged for your specific environment, or your competition pistol sprayed in purple, white, and black Carolina Cryptic, you want Carolina ceramic coating to do the job. Bud and his team of skilled technicians will carefully disassemble and clean your firearm, professionally apply the Cerakote in your choice of colors and patterns, and return your firearm to you in perfect working order. And they also do auto engine parts. When I wanted my competition handgun Cerakoted, I trusted Carolina Ceramic Coating, and you should too. Check out their work on Instagram. Search at CerakoteNC, that's at CERAKOTENC, or go to CarolinaCeramicCoating.com. And now it's time for Blue Collar Prepping with that bratty kid sister of the gun blogosphere, Erin Paulette.
Come on, every pony! It's time for Blue Collar Prepping with Erin Paulette!
I have been doing this segment for 3 years, and I only just now realized that while I've talked a lot about knives, I haven't talked about sharpening them. This is an oversight I intend to correct immediately. A sharp knife is essential for safe knife use. Not only does a sharp edge cut more efficiently, but it prevents operator injury. A sharp blade produces a smooth cut, while a dull blade can twist in your hand while cutting or come to an unexpected stop. However, sharpening a knife is more art than science. It's very, very easy to do it wrong and damage your knife and maybe even yourself in the process. Fortunately for us, there are some handy and affordable sharpeners out there which are pretty much idiot-proof. My current favorite is the Lansky Quad Sharp. Like the name suggests, it has 4 sharpening angles for different applications. A 17-degree angle, which gives an incredibly sharp edge suitable for filleting and fine slicing, but which is also easily dulled or damaged through hard work. A 20-degree angle, which is less of a razor but is better suited for repetitive or difficult work such as skinning or kitchen tasks. A 25-degree angle, which is far more robust and is a good all-around edge for outdoor knives. And a 30-degree angle, which is for heavy-duty cutting and chopping blades like axes, hatchets, and machetes. The use is very simple. Select an angle, put the blade in the slot, and gently, do not press down, pull the blade through the carbide cutters. There's no set number of times you should do this. Just keep going until it's as sharp as you like or it isn't getting any sharper. You can usually hear the sound of the knife change, and the pull will feel different when the majority of the work is done. Sometimes a pull-through sharpener will build up a burr line on one side of the blade. This is not unusual. Variations in stroke or carbide surface can do that. I fix this by alternating the direction of the sharpening strokes. Just turn the knife around so that you're pulling away from yourself rather than toward yourself, and a few strokes ought to clean that burr right up. However, there are times when you can't use a pull-through sharpener. Maybe you're sharpening an axe and the blade won't fit. Or maybe there's a ding or other damage to the edge that needs to be repaired before it can be sharpened. When that happens, you need more aggressive tools. My go-to tool in situations like this is a 2-grit puck sharpener. This is less easy than the pull-through sharpeners, so you'll want to watch the video linked in the show notes, but it's pretty forgiving for beginners. A sharpening puck will put an edge on practically anything. I use it to sharpen my mother's hedge trimmers, but it will put a working edge, i.e. not terribly sharp, but sharp enough, on practically anything. This is fine for tools which do most of their cutting with weight and impact, like an axe. If you want a finer edge, you'll need to go to something different. Diamond sharpeners are great for sharpening troublesome knives, but you need to be careful with them. Not only do they require more skill because you are essentially eyeballing the angle and freehanding the sharpener, but they also have a tendency to scratch the heck out of the knife. If you have a knife with an attractive finish or patina along the surface, be advised that diamond work will leave track marks. However, with some practice, you'll soon discover that you can quickly fix most knife problems and sharpen them in the field, so don't be afraid to practice on a cheap knife. When you become comfortable with estimating angles by eye and sharpening without a guide, you should consider carrying sharpening tools with you as part of your everyday carry. After all, if you carry a knife as part of your ADC, you should carry a means to sharpen that knife as well. I carry the Easy Lap pen-style diamond sharpener and the Speedy Sharp carbide tool. Both of them are small enough to be carried in a pocket, and between the two of them, you ought to be able to repair, sharpen, and hone any blade. Speaking of honing, did you know that you can touch up any blade using just a coffee cup? It's true. Take a ceramic coffee cup, turn it upside down, and hone the blade on the unglazed portion of the cup using small circular strokes. There's a link in the show notes with plenty of illustrations on how to do this.
Anti-gun researcher Tom Gabor speaks out against Stand Your Ground and whatever else comes to mind in This Week in Anti-Gun Nuttery.
So we're back to the well that is Loaded Conversations. This comes from the latest episode of the show, and with their production levels, that means it's over a month old. This episode, they have Thomas Gabor on. Tom is a Canadian criminologist who now lives in Florida, who is promoting his new book, Confronting Gun Violence in America. Of course, as you can guess, Tom is an anti-gun nut, and he's on the show to talk about...
I invited Tom on the show to talk about Stand Your Ground, a law that allows criminal defendants to justify murdering an actual or perceived assailant.
Oh, Rebecca, aren't you cute? You just said Stand Your Ground justifies murder. No, murder is the intentional and unlawful killing of another human being. It's illegal, here and everywhere. Stand Your Ground only addresses lethal force in self-defense. If a court rules a killing was illegal, Stand Your Ground does not apply. This makes Stand Your Ground and murder mutually exclusive. So let's hear a bit about Tom's views.
There are many ways of preventing gun violence while at the same time respecting the rights of gun owners.
I completely agree. Man, this might be a short segment if this is how he feels.
The Second Amendment and the views of the Second Amendment have been tremendously distorted.
Wait, he supports the rights of gun owners, but he doesn't support the Second Amendment? We heard Alan Corwin last week state that the legal views of the Second Amendment have been very consistent since the writing of the Bill of Rights. Really, the only people saying the Second Amendment is distorted are the nuts who want it repealed or ignored.
Getting weapons of war off our street and out of civilian hands with the high magazine capacity.
Yeah.
An absolute must as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, he supports the right of gun owners. Unless you own a modern sporting rifle or a magazine of arbitrarily too large capacity, which these days is just about every gun owner in America. Great. So we know exactly where this nut stands.
It's kind of a bogus argument. I thought that, the slogan, guns don't kill people, people kill people. And the notion that you have to choose between who's responsible, is it the individual or the method? And the research was telling me that both are important. The two are not mutually exclusive.
What the hell is he talking about? He's agreeing that it's false to say people don't kill people, but he's claiming that guns don't kill people, people kill people is a fallacy. So he's stating that guns sometimes kill people without human aid?
But that my focus was on the method, guns.
Adorable. He agrees that there are a large number of factors in violent crime, but he's going to ignore all that stuff and just focus on guns. And since we know how he feels about gun ownership in the Second Amendment, we know just how objective his observations are going to turn out.
Self-defense law talks about a proportional response. Okay, So if somebody comes at me with fists, traditionally, I can't come back and use lethal violence.
Self-defense is not Marcus of Queensberry rules boxing. There is proportional force in American law, but that all depends on the threat level of the encounter. Once you're in a deadly force encounter, all bets are off, and you may use any force necessary to end that threat. Of course, you need to stop using force as soon as the threat stops. So 5 guys come at you with no weapons but their clenched fist and their heavy work boots and state they want to kill you, you are legally justified running them over with a dump truck to get away. You just can't chase down the guys that are fleeing you in terror.
There is no obligation under Stand Your Ground laws to retreat. There's no obligation to talk your way out of the situation first.
Nor should there be. If you are successful in invoking Stand Your Ground, you are claiming your life was in imminent danger. When death is likely seconds away, the time for talking or running is over. Of course, there's no legal obligation to talk or evade a violent encounter, but this is stated as if people have a strong desire to kill another human being. With a few exceptions, this is not true. So people have every incentive in the world not to use deadly force except in the gravest of extremes.
Is if a person reasonably believes that they are about to be killed or suffer serious bodily injury or a forcible felony, they can use lethal violence. So if you reasonably believe, there does not have to be an actual attack.
Well, not only does the defender need to reasonably believe this, but so does the police and the judge. When you get down to that, it seems like a very reasonable law. Now he tells the story of two teens running for a bus while he was out for a walk. They startle him, and he takes a swing at one of the boys, thinking he was being jumped.
I might have pulled a gun and killed somebody who, at that evening, had absolutely no desire to do me harm.
No, from your story, you were clearly lost in your own head. Jeff Cooper describes this as condition white. You likely didn't think about self-defense until that split second you were surprised, and you responded in unrehearsed reaction. Not only was your reaction wrong, but it was sloppy, as you didn't even connect with your thrown punch. When you carry a gun, you can't help but think about when, where, and how you might use it. Also, you likely start thinking about how much you really would rather never have to use the gun in self-defense. This generally all totals up to somebody not getting so lost in their thoughts that they get startled by something as mundane as a bunch of people running for a bus.
So even if we are armed, the chances that we'll be able to deploy our weapon is very remote.
Except for that huge number of people who do defend their lives with a firearm. Gary Kleck wrote a paper on it.
Some of the research from the so-called pro-gun side, like Gary Kleck's mythical number of 2.5 million, that he claimed there were 2.5 million defensive gun uses each year, which has turned out to be so lacking in credibility. I mean, you have to dig into those chapters to see.
Except Kleck's research has been supported. And the support for your claim? We have to buy your book to find out? No thanks, Tommy. Something tells me Arthur Kellerman will be one of his references.
Most citizens are very poorly trained. Training is a very generous term in terms of what is done around the country for those people who are taking gun safety courses so that they can have a concealed weapon.
And in many states, there is no training at all. And what's the end result? Nothing. States without training requirements don't have higher incidents of accidents or improper use of self-defense law.
A person happens to live in a state where you have more regulation, like Massachusetts, New Jersey, California. It doesn't matter. You're going to have people from other states where you have extremely lax laws, where you have the training is a complete sham and a scam, I would add.
Except that places like Massachusetts, New Jersey, or California don't have particularly strong training requirements. They simply refuse to issue permits to people unless they are politically connected. You want to talk about scams?
Once you begin to keep firearms primarily for self-defense, and this is what we're evolving to, you get far more accidents, far more children getting a hold of them, far more teenagers committing suicide, far more uses in domestic disputes.
Except that violent crime is down, accidental death by firearm is at a statistical noise level, and teenagers represent the smallest demographic of suicide. Every claim he makes is simply a bad faith argument.
In addition to appearing here, Weer'd is a regular host on The Squirrel Report and blogs at weerdworld.com. That's WEERD world.com.
Weerd's daughter listened to the podcast 2 weeks ago and was horrified that I didn't know anything about her favorite books, Captain Underpants. So here she is to tell us why it's a great book series that we won't like.
Hi, Sean. I am here with my lovely daughter, and she was amused to hear a few shows ago that you didn't know anything about Captain Underpants. And it happens to be she is an expert. Do you love Captain Underpants books?
Yeah.
What is your favorite part about Captain Underpants?
Attack of the Talking Toilets.
Yeah, which book is that?
Captain Underpants and the Attack of the Talking Toilets.
Yeah, is that book 1 or book 2?
I don't know.
That's book 2.
Book 2.
All right, so now can you tell Sean everything you know about Captain Underpants so that he understands who Captain Underpants is?
Okay. Sean, I love Captain Underpants, and it's so funny, and I love it.
But who is Captain Underpants?
Ooh, the guy who wears a red cape and underpants.
And who is he when he's not Captain Underpants?
Mr. Cup.
And is Mr. Krupp a good guy or a bad guy?
Bye, guy.
How did he get to be Captain Underpants?
Someone snaps his fingers.
Somebody snapped their fingers. And why does snapping the fingers work? What did it, well, who are the two boys?
George and Harold.
Yeah, George and Harold. And what did George and Harold do to get Dr. Krupp so they snapped his fingers? He turned into Captain Underpants.
Snap the fingers.
No. Do you remember what they had? They had the ring.
Hypnotized him.
They hypnotized him, and he got to be Captain Underpants. And does he have superpowers?
Yes.
Did he have superpowers, though, in the first book?
No.
No, he didn't have superpowers. He was just a regular guy in his underpants. But how did he get superpowers?
I don't know.
You don't remember?
Because, look, the screen is in the way.
I think the screen's supposed to be there.
I'm supposed to move the microphone this way so I can talk louder.
Okay. But do you remember how he got his superpowers in book 3?
No.
They went into the spaceship, and what did they find in the spaceship?
Superpower juice.
Superpower juice. All right, and I will say one thing that little miss here doesn't probably understand and take for granted, but the books all start with a recap, and so we actually started on book, was it 7?
2.
No, we didn't start on book 2. That's Attack of the Talking Toilets. We started on book 7 because that was what they had at the library because they're in high demand, and you could start off just fine anywhere in the book series.
Can we?
So what would you say to any?
Let's hear, Dado.
Okay. Well, we'll let's just. Can I ask you one more question? Yeah. Would you say for any other little boys and girls who are listening to this show, would you say they should read Captain Underpants?
No.
No?
Yeah.
Why not?
Because they don't like it.
Why wouldn't they like Captain Underpants?
Because they don't.
Well, okay. So she enjoys it, but you wouldn't like it. Talk to you later, guys.
Well, final reminder, join GunBlog VarietyCast Radio Group on Facebook. That's GBVC Radio Group on Facebook. Let us know what you think of this episode and all the other episodes. Well, that's our show for the week. Remember that GunBlog VarietyCast Radio is a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network.
Find the show notes at gunblogvarietycast.com/episode 170.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the GunBlog VarietyCast. Music courtesy of Rob Allen at blog.roballen.com. You can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and Google Play Music. This podcast is made possible by the Firearms Policy Coalition and by contributions from listeners like you. This is a URS production.